so much for coming to Morning Coffee, and for those of you that are at home, we are resuming after a bit of a hiatus this summer. This is Lawrence Fox. We're going to be joined by other speakers as well. Larry and I did a lot of traveling this summer. So we went to, Vancouver and to Canada, and Larry went to?
Japan.
To Japan very suddenly, and I just got back from a trip from the UK. So I just wanted to give everyone an introduction of what it is that we're doing today. Also, I want to thank Shane Hidalgo and also Danny Lee and everybody here at ACC. So we're going to slow down for a second because Jill Stockinger just arrived. Should we advertise Lyft or Uber? And this is Jill Stockinger. And I'll explain their roles later. We're doing a very special project that we think is not only going to be enriching, but a lot of fun. We are going to take something a little different. I still call it semesters. We're going to be doing not only morning coffee, but we're going to be doing something we call Morning Coffee Plus, which we'll explain. And then Larry is an artist. Jill is a writer, editor, poet, wonderful poet. Caesar Nelson's going to be joining us. He's also a writer and photographer. We're going to produce Morning Coffee Anthology. This is something that we did a long time ago, and we're going to refresh it here. You'll all have an opportunity to be able to write up your stories, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, whether you're a seasoned artist or writer, or if you've never picked up a paintbrush or a pencil or a pen before. If there's a short story or an essay, a poem, a personal story in your life, I think this is really the project for you. And the idea for the anthology is to bring us all together through the written word and through art. And storytelling, oral storytelling as well. We'll be accepting a variety of creative contributions, including essays where you can share a life story or a memory or reflection, poetry, whether it's deeply personal or just a fun piece that brings joy, short stories, and flash fiction. Flash fiction is something, do you want to explain what flash fiction is, Jill? Have you ever done any?
Yeah, it's usually just, a lot of them are just, 100 words, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Speaking to Mike. Oh. It's a very short little story, sometimes just 100 words. It can be more, it can be less. Just capturing a feeling or telling a story really quickly. It's like a flash of words. So it's really short, but it's complete in and of itself.
Right. And I like to do a lot of things. I've called them hour stories, H-O-U-R stories, stories that you can literally just sit down and write in an hour. And I also like to do 60 seconds. So just have a prompt and you sit down and you create something in 60 seconds. We're also going to be able to include visual art, including photography, watercolor, assemblage, collage, pen and ink, sketches, and more. Larry's going to be sharing some of his. And you can see from the one that we did before that it includes almost everything. So if you're a photographer, we know that there's a lot of photographers here, you can add that as well. What we like about Morning Coffee Anthology is that you don't really need to be an artist or a writer to participate. It's about working together. It's about what you've been doing on the Thursday morning socials with just getting together in conversation and creating something beautiful as a community. So we're also going to host a series of programs and gatherings that will guide you, including some prompts or writing for art. We have some on the table for everyone who's here today. So if any time during this conversation the spirit moves you, there is paper, pencil, art supplies in the back. Feel free just to grab something. If you want to take something and bring it back at another time, that would be wonderful as well. And we're going to produce the anthology in the spring. Larry will talk a little bit. He is a book designer as well as an artist. And he'll be helping us, as well as Vanessa Perez, who did the Foods We Share, the Stories We Tell cookbook with us. You're going to be able to submit your work directly And I'll share details on how to do that very soon, including the submission guidelines and deadlines. For those of you that are interested, what we're talking about is something called Morning Coffee Plus. And that is, we'll be here some of the time, and we'll be in coffee houses around town. So I'm going to ask Jill, where did you come in from today that you had to take Lyft?
Near the arcade library, off of Howe and El Camino.
Okay, and Larry, where do you live?
I live in Midtown.
Right, so we came in together, but there are people scattered around, so we're going to be doing things in different places. The first ones here will be October, I've got the dates here somewhere, and if I'll repeat them again. I think it's October 17th, November 19th, December 19th, back here. Yeah, thank you. So we'll have those back here. And then we're doing this in partnership with the Renaissance Society. And Jill and Larry are members of the Renaissance Society, so I'm going to ask them in a minute to kind of share their experiences. We have Renaissance people at home. We have quite a few Renaissance people here, and some of us that are Renaissance ACC people, including Sheldon. So that first one is going to be soon, Monday, September 16th at Temple Coffee, which is on 8th Street. We'll do the same thing. We'll have writing prompts, art prompts. We'll get together for coffee. And each one of us will just share our stories. And then we hope to have the book launched with Larry's help, with Caesar's help, with Jill's help, and with others that are members. We have quite a few good editors at the Renaissance Society. We wanted to have it published in time for the big day of giving so that we have a fundraiser for ACC. And some of the proceeds will also go to the Renaissance ASI Student Food Pantry. So we're going to get started. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And the whole thing is to let's work together on this project. If you've got a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, then see what happens. And we're going to see what kind of magic we can create. But I'm going to start with having Larry introduce himself first. He is an artist. He's going to talk just a little bit about how long he's been with Renaissance, what the role he's taken as a book designer, but also his contributions as an artist. Okay. So Larry.
Well, as you've heard, my name's Lawrence or Larry Fox, and I have I have a master's from Sac State in art and a master's in education, and I've been working with Mary Ellen on projects for a few years. Long time. And we both
met in 1985.
Mm-hmm. But we both started off doing book design with I Street Press. Mary Ellen helped to write the grant for the I Street Press original espresso book machine, which was a machine that that Sacramento library bought to basically publish complete paperback books. The books, what you could do is you had a manuscript and you had a book cover, and you could basically, knowing the right combination of things, you could put the information into the machine and out would pop a complete paperback book. So
I'm going to hand that to Larry. That's the first book that came off the press at I Street, and it was very similar to Morning Coffee Anthology. We called this an omnibus. And it had all the same kinds of things that we're talking about here.
But I've been involved in art for a long time in Sacramento. I have been president of the Matrix Arts art group, and also have been doing art on my own for different people and things. One of the things that you have to sort of realize about yourself is everybody is an artist. You don't have to think about it as being, I want to be an artist. You are an artist because you can put a pencil or a brush in your hand and you can start doing art, or you can also sculpt. For example, I tend to like to do work that's very personal, and I do work having to do with my own life and my own travels. I've lived all over the world. I lived in Iran for 4.5 years. And so I've traveled all over the world. As you heard, I just got back from Japan, and I've been just got back from Alaska also. So you can use all of your experiences to do art, and do writing. And so one of the things I was realizing earlier, that sometimes people don't give themselves enough credit for what their background is. They think, you don't talk about a lot of things you do. For years, I didn't talk about my time in Iran or the places I traveled, but I've traveled all over the world when I was fairly young. And all those things that you do really add up to what makes you a human being. One of the places that I have been that I really enjoyed was China. So I've done several pieces having to do with China, and both ceramics and artwork. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing as long as you enjoy doing it, and sometimes other people can enjoy it also. I think you just have to express yourself as best you can and sort of push the envelope, as they say. So, as I said, work is very personal to me. This is a drawing I did. I am the little baby here, and this is a picture of my father holding me when I was probably under 6 months old at the time, and where we were living when I was growing up. And so basically, just start when you are doing work. Think about things. You can take shortcuts sometimes. You can do all sorts of ways. This is basically a collage of art and pictures. So you just have to sort of figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it. And there's no cheating in art, really.
Good. And when we do our hands-on sessions, there will always be an artist type there and a writer, poet person there as well. So thank you, Larry, for sharing that one. And I'm going to go to Jill. And then Jill's going to actually share some of her poetry.
Hi, my name is Jill Stoppinger, and what I've learned is the most important thing is to write and just keep writing.
Oh, you need your...
Just keep writing every day. That's really important, to not stop, to just trust yourself and let the words flow. Whenever you feel blocked, just look around. You can write about being blocked. You can write about what you see. You can write about what you feel. You can write about what you've experienced. Just keep writing. That's the most important thing. I'm a member of the Sacramento Poetry Center, and I recommend joining that. I'm a member of the Sacramento Poetry Alliance that split off from the Poetry Center. So there's, the alliance is www.sacpoetryalliance.com. The Sacramento, and they have a website with monthly meetings and have some amazing people from around the world. The next two they're having is Jamil Jan Kochai and Torsa Gosal, and they both won awards. They've been the New Yorker, Best American Short Stories. And that's September 14th, 4 p.m., 1169 Perkins Way. And they have constant meetings. They're an amazing group. They have a lot of past professors of English Lit from CSUS. And then there's the Sacramento Poetry Center, which has a lot of writing groups, and they're amazing. They have meetings 3 times a month usually, and their website is www.sacpoetrycenter.org. The 4th Tuesday of every month, poets get together, just of all levels, all kinds. Everyone is welcome to come up and share what they've written at the mic. And that's at Twin Lotus Thai, 4th Tuesday of every month from 6 to 9, open to everyone. So definitely avail yourselves of these poetry groups. They're fun, they're enjoyable. You meet people who will really applaud your writing no matter what level you're at. I send my stuff out all the time. I use Duotrope. Duotrope, that lists places to send out your writing, all kinds, flash fiction, memoirs, poetry, to hundreds of different journals. This year I was published in 4 of them through that. Remembering Audre Lorde, I had a poem published. Voices, which is local and loves to publish local Sacramento poets. I got 5 things in that this year. The Tule Review is published every year by the Sacramento Poetry Center. I had 1 in that. Heron Clan, which I think is located in on the East Coast. I got 1 in that. But if you just keep sending your stuff out, sooner or later, it'll be picked up, and don't be discouraged. Every writer has hundreds of slips saying, no, we can't use your writing. But if you keep sending it out, sooner or later, you'll start getting hits. The more you write, the better you get. You'll get help in editing and revising your work in these different centers. I strongly recommend them. So
Let me just add one thing. The good news about the Morning Coffee Anthology is we're not going to turn you down, right? So you're going to be in it. And we're going to help you through the process. And before she reads her poetry, one of the things I'm going to say is, for me as a writer, and I write every day, I produced 20,000 words in 1 week recently, getting something out. So I write a lot, but I write through my iPhone. I tell stories and I record them. If I talk to somebody here in a room, unbeknownst to you often, and I'll tell you later, I've recorded you and then asked for permission to send it. So if you're a storyteller and you haven't written anything down before, you can share a story and we'll literally record you and then transcribe that and have you edit it later. Thank you.
So I'm going to wrap up my part with 3 poems, 1 short, 2 medium. I just wrote this one this month, Completion. The blue silk sky shot through with threads of sun's gold, streaks of moon silver, cloud white woven into the warp and woof. Gray rain like stitches pulled out of the fabric, the glory of birds, their song and flight, a flitter of glitter surrounds earth, touches everywhere. That's my first one.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. The second one is a little more playful. The little green man, a small twiggy man, armed springy branches with green leaves, his hair abundant curls of twining ivy, eyes bright with mischief, inside whirls of wood, runs and leaps with the squirrels twirling round the trunks of trees. In winter, deep snowdrifts blue in the moonlight cover his home, and the maze of passageways that snake under knotted roots of oaks and elms and hickory trees. There he keeps watch, guarding the slow, steady heartbeat of the forest. He sings lullabies, strange, mournful tunes, and plays on flutes of hollow bones of birds to ease the sap of trees into slumbering, until he signals it is spring, time for the woods to wake and burst with leaves, to laugh their flowers and be glad green again. Sometimes he dreams of a god named Pan and lusty satyrs, but such fancies do not trouble him. He exults in the role that he performs, caretaker, sole guardian of all that live in the woods, and knows his life force is bound with theirs. Should I do a third, or do you?
Yeah, no, do a third.
I'll do one more.
So she's going to read one more. Sheldon, we're going to let Caesar know that if he can come in here in about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to talk to the 2 of them about inspiration and some other questions. So I'm going to talk to them as well, but do the third one now.
Pomegranates, artichokes, coconuts. In memoriam, Harold Louis Wattell, September 30th, 2021 to January 29th, 2017. I've been thinking about my father and his gifts of food when we lived in Levitttown, Long Island. Yes, a town built by Levitt and Sons. I was 5 or 6 when my father shared the fruit of a pomegranate with me and my older sister, the shining ruby red arrows, best enjoyed without ingesting the small white seeds, englobed in the quivering, translucent flesh that bursts with tart sweetness on the salivating tongue. He used a screwdriver and a hammer to break coconuts open. We'd drink the milk and gnaw on the pieces. He taught us to dip artichoke leaves into butter and scrape the flesh off with our teeth. Every time I eat a coconut, an artichoke, a pomegranate, I think of him. I picture him on vacation at the Lewis farmhouse on 50 acres in New Hampshire, my father dancing in the sun like Zorba the Greek, arms lifted, fingers clicking, feet kicking, his eyes closed, singing, "Never on Sunday." So unlike his button-down professorial persona, the dean of business and economics at Hofstra University, he'd marshal our group to march on the neighbor's orchard to gather enough sour green apples for my mother to make those heaped up, lumpy, crusted apple pies for Thanksgiving on our friend's farm. They were the best pies I've ever eaten. So much to be thankful for.
Oh, thank you. I love that. Good. So I'm going to change it up a little because you inspired me. I'm going to talk to them in a second, but what I'm going to do is I'd like to throw it out to the audience, because what I love about that particular poem is that I could both hear, I could smell, I could taste. So you were using all of your senses when you created that. So I will first ask you for what your inspiration was for that poem, but then I'm going to throw it to the audience. I'll share one of my memories and then ask if anybody would be willing to take her microphone and talk about it. So what inspired you to write that, or how long did it take you? What made you sit down and do it?
It took just about 30 minutes because it was the time of my father's birthday, September 30th. I was thinking of him. And one of my strong memories is most Thanksgiving, we'd go from New York to New Hampshire and spend time on this farm that was built in the 1700s. And just having those wonderful memories, I wrote the poem.
Great. So for me, what it was evocative of, and how many of you have written your life story or taken any of the life stories classes here? Great. Anybody else who has kept, do you keep journals? So keeping a journal, which I do, other people have as well. I created a book a while back. This is one of the I Street Press books called Extracts, and I took all of the food-related stories because most of you know that I'm a food historian, and I put them into one place. But my favorite story, which I'm not going to read, is called Sent to the City, and we talk about prompts, and I'm where there's something. If you can't think, somebody gives you a prompt, there's on each table to kind of get going. But all I could think of was when I was a kid growing up, you knew where you were in Sacramento by what the smell was. So what did it smell like during canning season if anybody grew up here? Anybody remember? So for me, you knew exactly when peach season was in and when tomato season was in. But in my neighborhood, I knew where I was by, if I was close to Miss Friedis's house, they were from Portugal, and just the smells that they had coming from their house of saffron and chorizo. We lived next door to the G's, and the G's had their own things. So come on in, Caesar. Smells that came out of that. We had a German couple that were just a little bit further down, so they always had pork and sauerkraut. You would smell it. But the other thing that I can remember is going to Vacaville, and in Vacaville, you always smelled onions going through Vacaville, right? During strawberry season, if you went to Florin, the entire area was perfumed by strawberries. So Caesar. That's because one of my best friends is Clarence Caesar. Come on up, because we know you've got to work. We're going to have you do your poetry. But does anybody have any sense of smell? Larry, you can do it too, that inspired you, or the scent of something that has inspired you that you'd be willing to share? Are you all too shy? Do you have anything, Larry, that you can think of from scent?
With scent, one of the places, like I said, I lived in Iran for 4.5 years, and one of the things that I really remembered as far as scent is concerned is the bazaar in Tehran, which is the capital of Iran. And I used to live fairly close to the bazaar, so the bazaar is basically like a big shopping mall, except it's called a bazaar instead of that. And what was really wonderful is there would be all sorts of businesses in certain areas of the bazaar. Like there would be jewelry businesses in one section, clothing businesses in another, and food of different kinds. So one of the things that I remembered about the food was I would be going to one section which basically people would be selling spices. And the spice smell would be overwhelming. It was so wonderful. So I mean, it still sticks with me to this day.
So, and before I have Caesar talk, there is one smell that I have that always reminds me of Lawrence Fox. Can you guess what that smell is, Larry?
No.
Bergamot. Am I right? Mm-hmm. So bergamot is a scent that he likes. I notice that he's attracted to it wherever we go, and whether it's bergamot soap or something else, whenever I encounter it, I just feel, and I have to tell you, Larry and I have known each other, this just sense of comfort and joy, because even when he's not with me, he's with me. So that's why if we talked about prompts, if there's anything in your life that you think you want to write and you don't know what you want to write about or you feel under pressure, just use your 5 senses and you'll create something. Now I want to introduce Caesar, who works here, but he's also a poet and a writer, and am I right, also a photographer?
Yeah, correct, Mariella.
As well. And so he's part of the, we're the part of the editorial team that will be working on Morning Coffee Anthology.
Yes, is it on?
Oh, yes, hold it up.
Hello? Hello? No. Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Caesar Nelson, one of the,
Closer to your mouth.
oh, closer. One of the volunteers and participants here in the program, CSEP program with ACC. Well, this morning, we're going to talk about the anthology, or what about writing, whatever you guys said.
So, and whatever you want. So what inspired, how long have you been writing? What inspired you to write and use that as your means of expression?
Oh, okay. I've been writing probably since I was 7, 8 years old, and speaking poetry or writing poetry throughout school. And what's inspired me most of all is that if you can get it on the print, get it to the paper, it has a joy that brings out of your soul, and that you can touch someone else's at the same time. I've been a writer and editor for various newspapers here locally as well as throughout the country. And when people ask you to write a story, you think about 2 or 3 things, how interesting it's going to be, the subject. And does anybody really want to really read this story? Because a lot of the times they just look at it and don't say anything and like, oh, okay. I'd say, okay. But today I have a poem I had written back in 1992. It was a poetry contest or an anthology book, what we were talking about, and it got placed in the National Poetry Society. And it's called Love Life. Live life, love life, like thy neighbor. O thy brother and sister, live to a ripe old age. Glory. Morning's dew sprinkles upon our head. Honor. No more tears, no more fears, that you and I may live as equals, as happy equals. You have a wish? Salvation. That our conscience is like a crystal clear dish, and thy shoulders carry no blocks of chips. So, our words are truthful, righteousness. Our fingers hand a greet of faith and friendship. On earth is our natural habitat of human spirit. However, where cars, airplanes, motorcycles, and bicycles, like lead bullets, zoom about space. Destiny is ours of peaceful unions, heavenly, hearts filled with joyful smiles, angels. Together we have the power of choice. Pray. Judgment is our 21st birthday. Hello.
That was great. So now I'm going to throw it back to everybody. Again, for me, if I don't write it down, it didn't happen, period. And I don't know if it's about memory, that I forget about memories. But if I don't write down what my list of things to do today is, I don't know what I'm doing that day. And if I don't document in some respects, then I don't feel that it's complete. I have a problem in that sometimes I think I experience less because I'm so captured by taking a photograph of a moment that I sometimes don't just experience the moment for pure joy. I feel that way especially sometimes when it comes to travel. If anyone was to see the 17,000 photos that I have on my iPhone right now, 90% of them would be the food I ate. Truly. So you can tell that for whatever reason, food and you know, visual things that are visual are really important to me. In terms of being an artist, and I did bring one thing that I created. Larry said that we were book artists, and I've made handmade books. Larry and I have taught how to make your own paper, how to create your own books, book binding, book almost everything. It's the medium that I really like. But I like to think that everything is a book, and I like found objects. So this is just something that I found in a thrift store, and I just used whatever words. This happened to be Russian paper that was close by, and I created a book out of that. I had a smaller book that's inside that someone borrowed. And it's just a thing, as almost any way of doing it. I've made books out of ceramics. I've made book out of fabric, and almost all of the visual art that I've done incorporates words in some way. Having said that, I took ceramics with Larry and with Tony Nitsoulis and Yoshio Taylor for how many years? 15 years? I have 150 pieces of bisqueware where I created something, because I also like just the feel of clay in my hands. I just love it. That I never glaze because I never learned how to draw or paint. So when it came to glazing, I was always screwing them up. I'm going to bring all those 150 pieces in along with glaze, so if anybody wants at them, you can and create that. What will end up going in the book is we'll photograph it, right? And that's what's going to go in the book. But maybe we'll end up doing a performance piece as well when we go to launch, where we can share our stories and share our art as well. So that's kind of how I came about it. And also, the other thing I wanted to make is, I still don't consider myself a professional, even though people pay me to do it. I do it for the pure love of creation. I just love creating something. But if I can't share it with somebody, that's something else that kind of has no meaning. So anybody else want to share something similar to your story? What inspires you? Why you do what you do? And words of encouragement for them.
Well, part of it, I think, is I was a librarian for 42 years. The last 22 was Sacramento Public Library, and I ran a writing group the third Thursday of every month, 7:30 to 9:30. And part of the joy of writing is also sharing it, but hearing what other people write and seeing their reactions. And it just inspires me to keep writing. So I'm part of 2 online writing groups, the Renaissance Society Writers Group 1, which has 12 members and unfortunately is closed because all 12 members produce 2 to 3 things every week. We meet every single week and share our new stuff. So there's pressure there to keep producing, which is good. I think it's really important if you're really into writing to join a group, and it does put pressure on you to keep writing.
Good. So Larry, any words of wisdom?
Well, as I was saying a little earlier, what you should do is don't worry about what subject you are working on as long as it's personal, because what tends to happen is personal things tend to be very general. If you have an experience in life, everyone else has probably had the same sort of experience, but your outlook is unique, so it really will open up the ideas for other people, that they will see a general idea that will be personalized, that maybe hits them in a more personal way.
And how about you, Caesar?
What I found is being here 1 year, and someone had mentioned about me writing stories on this, and several people here that were over 100 years old. And I was happy to do it, but I was just surprised, again, that someone had read some of my writings or heard about me public speaking. So if you have something that's dear to your heart, or that leaf or that flower or that little dog walking down the street that happens to stop by and say hello to your grass, write about it.
Good. We have a question then, yes.
Well, you seem to say that when you write, you can be published.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And that's the whole idea, is for those of you that want to make sure that you'd like to see your stuff in print, or the other thing we're going to do is tell people that want to create, how many of you have wanted to do your family story and then pass that on to your family? Anybody else here? Quite a few of you. So that's one of the things that we'll always be doing when we do our programs, is to get people to share their stories, to get them written down, or even just videotaped in some way so you can pass it on. And I hope I don't embarrass you, Mr. Lopez. Tony and I play, I'm going to admit to people where I am on Tuesdays. We play poker here almost every Tuesday when I'm not traveling. And I was thinking about what makes me keep on going every time, because I'm competitive, it's a joy. But what I loved is the last 2 sessions that I've come to, Tony has told stories about growing up in the same neighborhood that I grew up in, which is Southside Park. And the joy that he has recounting the stories, the connections that we feel when we talk about spaces that we both were had. He's a little older than me, about 20 years older than me. But even though there was that kind of generational, we were there at the same time. And then I also see that neighborhood in a different way, because I saw it as a child, and the stories he's been telling, he saw it as a teenager. So he might not realize he's been an inspiration or that those stories are important, but I'm so sorry I haven't been taping them.
Yeah, really.
From now on, Tony,
He has
I'm
good
gonna be
stories.
taping them because they're wonderful, and that's what I'll throw out to everybody before of what it feels like just as a person when somebody else shares their story. Any comments?
Well, I like talking to Tony because I'm originally from Sacramento also, just McClatchy High School. So, and so we're together on Tuesday also. Very competitive at the poker game. But the gentleman has good stories from growing up until his time in the service and now here.
Yeah.
And if you can have someone to tell you their life story, to share it, and you're willing in your heart to listen, oh, please take it in.
Good.
You're welcome, Tony.
Good. So Larry, anything that
Inspiration.
you'd like to add, or Jill? No. So I'm going to say, as an artist, because I used to call myself an artist and I don't anymore. because I just realized I can't kind of do art and do writing. It's just too hard for me to do both, I have to tell you. But when it comes to poker, there are times when I've been wanting to get into clay, because one of the things that my father collected when he was a kid is, I don't know if you guys had them, there were always these dogs playing poker around a table. Do you remember those? So that's what I'll probably create. Now what I wanted to do was to, she's not with us, is in the first Morning Coffee Anthology, and we are dedicating this to Joy J.G. Joy is a member of ACC and a member of Renaissance Society. Very sadly, she had a stroke, about 6 or 8 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. She's in assisted living. This was her original concept. We're still going to try to involve her as much as we can. Does anybody here know her from Mahjong? She's here almost every Monday and Wednesday. But in the first one, Kimberly wrote one because we talked about prompts. And when I'm stuck, and I get stuck a lot, then I always look oftentimes for one word inspiration. What's just one word I can think of? And so the word that I threw out one day, and we called this All in a Day's word, was adornment. And this is what she came up with, and I think it's perfect for today. Today's theme is adornment. I sit and look around the room at the accents and embellishments that accentuate a face, a neck, a pair of ears, fingers, wrists, and even the clothing of the wearer. Already in existence on the walls, in the cabinets or cupboards, the floor and ceiling are adornments that also captivate my attention. It slipped my mind that the hostess provides most of what is needed to participate in the day's activities. I now have a box of stuff to schlep back to the car when I leave. It's been years since I packed the box of craft and sewing materials. It's a bit hard to write with the jewelry demonstrations to the left of me, the painting and illustrations directly across from me, and the floaters in the room making their way between the kitchen, dining room, and front room. As I get older, I find it hard to focus my attention if there are multiple voices or actions occurring in the same space and time. This is partly due to my inability to curb my curiosity and want to be everywhere at once. I'll fall back on my self-professed philosophy that too many choices confuse people and remind myself that I opted to write versus partaking in the other options offered today. Having reinforced this thought, it just hit me that there is also a literary embellishment with words. How shiny, how colorful, how visual or crafty do I want to be with my words today? Simplicity versus sophistication, plain and boring versus well-dressed and eye-catching, bland to bling, dull to lustrous, much like the wire that Sister Sheba is using to construct a unique, one-of-a-kind bracelet. I can wire a string of words together to construct a sentence. And much like Laura's artistic illustrations of wedding gowns through the medium of watercolor, I can paint a picture using my words. I can water down the meaning or add additional color in my choice of mixing words to give new meaning and insight. My words can be as translucent or as opaque as I choose them to be. I take a quick glance around at myself and what I have donned to cover and express myself today. Comfortable shoes, a striped pair of black slacks, a white shirt and sweater, and no jewelry save my black wristwatch. I am very straightforward and clear, pulling no punches. Here it all is, on paper, as I am, in easy-to-read black and white. So I want to thank Kimberly for that, but I want to give you the evolution of this as well. I don't know how many words it is. This was a 15-minute prompt on adornment. And each one of us wrote or did some kind of an art piece in that 15 minutes, and then we shared that. And that's what we're going to be doing when we get together is, something where we create quickly. She then took, what she wrote then was pretty good, but she took that back and it got reworked and edited and done, where it probably took her, it could have taken her 2 or 3 months to really refine it. And one of the things that I always suggest is you just get it down on paper. And get it down on paper or in clay or whatever you're going to do. Just kind of work quickly to get the ideas out. You can always go back and refine it. Larry also is a book artist and does ceramics. How many of your ceramics do you keep versus rework or throw away and start over, Larry? Or a piece of art?
It just depends on the piece.
Just depends on the piece.
Sometimes you have a piece that comes out very successful, and sometimes you never want to look at it again, so you just hide it or you throw it away.
And how about you? How much do you rework, and how much does it just kind of get on the page in the very beginning?
Well, I get it on the page. It gets filed immediately. That means that it sits there on the desk, and I'll probably look at it later on in the afternoon or something like that, or maybe a day or so. For this one right here, I was in Southern California, and I was a writer down there for different projects in the industry there. But what stood out to, let me ask a question here anyway. What stood out to anyone in this poem? Anything in particular? Yes, Marcus.
I like writing about my personal life. What made me the way I am today?
Yes.
So if you didn't hear it, what he says, I like writing about myself and what made me who I am today.
Yes. What's significant to me, besides the entire poem, but the part is, I must have been really looking to the 21st century, because that's basically the judgment of our being here on Earth, the habitat and things of that sort. And it says, judgment is our 21st birthday. Well, actually, that was the 21st century I was speaking of. So I don't know if anyone had seen that parallel or seen the inside of that. So when I have read this poem other places, some people have mentioned they caught that, and because it's our judgment. We're in judgment in the 21st century
Good.
for all the things we've done, good and bad,
So
in society.
I'm going to throw this out as a question if anybody in the audience wants to. You guys are quiet. We're not hearing people at home. But how important it is to have people listen to our stories and listen intently.
Yes.
Because we all have stories to share, but for a lot of us, we don't have an audience to do it. That's why I love the Thursday social programs that you guys have here, because you do have a chance to be able to have a conversation and to develop some pretty intimate and meaningful relationships that way. So we want to thank you for listening, but we also want to encourage you to create. And so what we brought, it's at every table. For any of you that are at home or on Zoom, if you send an email to Morning Coffee Press, that's Morning Coffee, MORNING, Coffee, COFFEE, Press, PRESS, at gmail.com, we will send you the prompts that we use today. With permission, I'll ask each one of them to give us one of the poems or more that we can send out to people so that we can share. And we'll send the upcoming dates that we're going to be getting together. But here's some of the prompts that we have, and then some suggestions for what you might do if you were writing. And then I'll ask if you have some ideas inspired by them as well. So one of them is a window I remember. So if it was a prompt, describe a memorable window you've looked through, whether it's a window from your childhood home, a train, or a car. What did you see? How did it make you feel? And then for art, draw, paint, or sketch a window and what's outside or inside. You could focus on a simple memory or create an imaginative scene. Any additions that you want to make to that? Or anybody in the audience, what you could do? And then another prompt is the sound of silence. Write about a time when silence felt important. Was it comforting, settling, or filled with meaning? And again, for art, create an image that represents silence using abstract shapes, colors, or a scene that evokes stillness. One of the things I like to do is collage. Larry is incredible, and he's tried to teach me how to draw, by the way. But it's just not a medium that I'm drawn to. So I like to just cut up pieces of paper. I just like taking things from magazine, old photographs or whatever, and creating a collage. And then I'll do just one more, morning light. Describe how morning light changes a space you know well. How does it make you feel, or what memory does it evoke? And then for art, create a visual representation of light in the morning, whether abstract or based on a real place. And so I want to just use the morning light prompt. One of the things that I remember about morning light was when my mother was alive, she was always working. And I don't remember her being very still very often. But in one of the houses we had, and my father had purchased a Chinese antique store and was selling Chinese antiques. And she had taken a lot of them that had 12 different shelves. And so there was a Kuan Yin on one shelf and a Hotai on another one, and dragons, all of these pieces. And every so often, she would just stand in the window with the light streaming on her, and she would begin to cry. There was just something, in that scene. And so I asked her, was there a particular piece that made her cry? And she said, oh, no, I don't see them at all. It's just that I miss some of the things I never got to do in my life. And one of the things she never got to do was to travel to those places that were represented in that window. I've never written about that, but I thought, you know what? That's a good inspiration. And one last thing before, and I'll ask everybody else. Larry said that his art is very, very personal. So is mine. Almost everything that I write about, and I am going to use extracts. This is a book that I wrote that's called Extracts, Mostly True Stories with a Sprinkling of Recipes. And my brothers say that everything I write is fiction because they don't remember anything. Like that story, they're going to go, huh? When did Mom ever stand in front of a window? We do not have the same memories. We don't, kind of deal with the same way. But I did put it together in a book. And when I realized that I thought I was writing about myself, and I'm not. I'm revealed by the stories that I tell. The stories are about my mother, they're about my father, they're about growing up in Southside Park. They're a time when my mother took me for my 16th birthday to the Palomino room, which was a big splurge for her, and ordered steak tartare. Now, my mom was not a very curious, eater. So I realized that by telling the stories of my family, my neighborhood, my city, and my space reveals much more about me than if I sat down and said, I'm Mary Ellen Burns, and I've done blah, blah, blah. I very seldom write about my own experiences. And that's going to be the last thing I'm going to throw it out to you guys before we give a couple of dates. Any comments like that for you?
I wrote a poem that included our words reveal us to ourselves.
Ooh, I like that. Larry, anything?
Well, I think that when you start doing artwork or write or whatever creative endeavor you get involved in, you really are sharing secret parts of yourself, something that hasn't been exposed before. And that's really, really wonderful because I think people are too guarded. And when you are able to give someone a special part of your heart, that's really a nice thing.
It's really nice to share a piece of you throughout the day, on paper or in person. That smile, as I've written in here, that smile that really helps our heart to live a little bit longer that day or that month, and or to help that other person out. live just like you, happy.
Again, we want to thank ACC. I want to thank Caesar Nelson, Lawrence Fox, Jill Stockinger, Sean Hidalgo, and Danny, all the help, whoever set up the tables for doing this for us. And especially want to thank the fact that this is filmed, because one of the things, this is, it's partly, I don't know what I say until I hear it back. I don't remember what I just said. I do love having a permanent record and to know that this is going to be on YouTube. And I think that's going to be something else we're going to do with Morning Coffee as well. So I know that some of you are going to say, I'm not a writer, I'm not an artist, I don't want to participate. If all you want to do, and I don't mean all, if you want to be Tony and share a story, even if it's at poker, remember I'm here on Tuesdays, just to share a story at any time, just grab us. We'll be back October 17th. I think it's November 19th and December 19th here at ACC. So we'll have art supplies. We'll be able to just share and whatever. And then for Renaissance members, you're invited here as well. Anybody in the community, you do not have to be any of our members to participate. But our first get together for Renaissance and people here in a coffee house, because that's where I do my biggest creation. I write 90% of what I write is in a coffee house somewhere. Truly, I bring my computer. I'm a longhand writer, and I just do it. The first one's going to be Monday, September 16th at Temple Coffee, 4201 H Street. We'll set up some other dates as well. We wanted to get out into the community because not everybody, Marge Tarble, who's a wonderful participant, it's just too far for her to come from Gold River, so we'll do something closer. So please join us. And the last thing I'll say is our next regular, what I call like this talk, Morning Coffee, is on December 5th. It'll be the first Thursday of the month. Larry and I are traveling. Oh, I never tell people when we're traveling. We're traveling in October. But it'll be December 5th. And I'm going to be inviting David Suhu and Elaine Korn and other people. The story's going to be why the Jews love Chinese food. But especially the story in Sacramento, because the relationship between Chinese and Jews in Sacramento goes from the gold rush on. Some of it is a tragic story, some of it is a wonderful story of community and connection. And so we're going to be sharing that. And not surprisingly, we'll have dim sum and bagels and lox. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again. Bye.